Just stepped out in courage. I still don't have a website. I still don't have business cards, but I have clients. Don't let those things get in your way.
Welcome to this episode of Overwhelmed and Over It, the place where parent entrepreneurs get to be real about the beautiful, chaotic life that we're living every day. This week's guest just holds a special place in my heart. I don't know if you know that, Christina,
No.
but every time I see your name pop up, I just oh, it feels like a warm hug.
Oh,
I'm so happy that you are in my world and that we get to stay connected
oh,
online.
that's so sweet.
And I'm so excited that we get to check in today and share your story because I am so grateful for the work that you are doing in this world. Because as a mother myself, I don't think that there is enough support and love for us and the realities of what our lives look like. So, Christina, do you want to introduce yourself to the Overwhelmed and Over It audience and tell
Sure.
us about your founder journey and how you got into
Yeah,
this work?
absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here, Gabs. I really appreciate it. And yeah, my name is Christina Kohl. I am a former HR professional and I'm a former stay-at-home mom. I was at home for 13 years with my kids. That's what we needed in our family at that time. I wanted to be back in the workforce at around year 11, but it took a while to get my foot back in the door. And in looking back, that's where my mission comes from, is wanting to help other stay-at-home moms come back to work and make that journey easier. And because I'm an HR professional, I've been on both sides of the table, of the interviewing table, the hiring process. And I learned what works for people that are coming back into the workforce and wanted to take my personal experience on both sides and offer it to others. So that's what really got me into coaching. Um, I guess a couple years after I came back to work is when I started. And it was just at the neighborhood park down the street. I used Nextdoor to promote it, saying, hey, I'm going to do this workshop on what you can do this summer to get ready to come back to work in the fall. Bring your kids. My teenage daughter's going to be there to babysit. And I didn't know if anyone was even going to show up. But I had 6 people show up to that workshop in the park that day. Nobody brought their kids, so my kids just played, which was fine. But that made me realize I was on to something. Like there's a need for this community, and not that I didn't already know it, but to have strangers show up and want to learn and hear what I had to say, that was really powerful. So that's how it began.
Your Your story of how you got started, I just always think about it with such fondness because I think that's one of the things as entrepreneurs we're always so scared of, right? Like, what if I put something out there and nobody wants
Right.
it? Well, let me just give you a little spoiler alert. It's going to happen. It happens to every last one of us. We put something out there that nobody wants. But also, you just don't know until you try, right? And so, like, I love that you didn't have a fancy landing page and a lead magnet and a sign up form and you didn't have these glamorous things. It was just like, this is a mission I'm passionate about. This is something I know that other women can use. And this is the fastest path to bringing it to the world, which is like, let's just show up at the park. And this is how I tell the masses that it's
Yeah.
available. And I love that it just takes it gets you out of your own way. And I think it's a really beautiful reminder that we can get so wrapped up in what are all the things we have to get started. And it's like, no, take a step back. What's the bare
Right.
minimum you
Right.
need to
And
get
I did. I
started?
felt like, okay, I need to get business cards. I need a website. I need all the things. I need a logo. And I just stepped out in courage with, faith that let's just see what happens. And I'll tell you, I still don't have a website. I still don't have business cards, but I have clients. So it's those things. If for anyone listening, don't let those things get in your way. It's so easy just to like, I have to have everything perfect and ready before I even open my doors or hang my shingle. But that was just me. Like I said, on Nextdoor, I had a couple of girlfriends that knew me and that maybe I had helped, with their job searches. I'm like, can you engage on the Nextdoor post just to let other people see it? Because I kind of intuitively knew that would help. And then, yeah, we met in the park I live in Colorado, so we can't really meet in the park in the wintertime because it's cold and snowy. So I was doing a monthly workshops and we met and we moved to the local library and we're meeting there in person, and I created a meetup group to like help like know like who's coming. So I wasn't doing all the stuff in the direct messages and Nextdoor. And then when COVID happened, I didn't know how to help anyone else, find a job, let alone what I was doing. So I kind of pulled back, and then I got a new job, and I was busy, busy, busy all the time, and just didn't have time to maintain this. So that was in 2018 when I started at the park, and I did it for about a year and a half, and then just kind of put things on hold. And I'm coming up on my 2-year anniversary in March of 2023. Is I gave notice in January, and in March is when I left my corporate job, thinking, I was just wanted to get back to coaching, and I just couldn't manage it in my 9 to 5. Let's be real, it was more like 7 to 10. I mean, it was a lot of hours, weekend hours, and I was just kind of burning out and just really wasn't getting to work on the things that I was passionate about. And in my mind, well, I already had a business, right? I already had the logo, and I had the workshops, and I had, the start of it. I thought I was just there waiting for me to turn it on. In reality, I was kind of starting over at zero. So, I wound up changing the name, and I wound up, using LinkedIn instead of Nextdoor, because I realized we don't have to reach whoever's in a 20-mile radius of me. I can reach people all over. And actually, one of my earlier clients is based in London, and I'm in Colorado, USA. So became international pretty quickly. And the other thing that I noticed, Cabs, is the change. So I'm marketing to the stay-at-home moms that are coming back to work, midlife, mid-career, ready to step back in, and finding that wall, that obstacle of not being welcome like we hope that we would be. But the thing is, about half of my clients are actually currently employed women. Um, and as I was sharing with them on calls, is that when they were just drawn to my messaging, and so I remember sharing with the first person that was in that situation, I'm like, if I can help someone who hasn't worked for 5 or 10 or more years, the same things that I'm teaching are certainly going to help someone who's currently working. Because if that's like one of the most challenging job searches, when you've had that gap, both in your mindset as well as just how that shows up, how do you put it in the resume? How do you talk about it? How do you get past the gatekeepers? So anyway, it's just been really an interesting journey of, focusing on the stay-at-home moms, but really finding that the services I provide are applied to a broader audience. So
Well, and I love that you called it a journey, because I think that's the reality of entrepreneurship, right? Is like we can step into it, we can step out of it,
Mhm.
we can come back to it. And it's much like our careers and it is a part of our careers. And, who knows, right? If you continue to do this full time, part time, if you continue to serve just women, right? There's so many unknowns that could change. But that, I think, is what makes the part of this so much fun, is that we get to decide what's next, and we get to decide what's working. And I know just before we hit record, we were talking about like setting up of the podcast, because you also have a podcast that's fabulous. And it's just, what does that structure look like, and how do we book guests, and what does that flow look like? And there's so many unknowns that can be really scary, but it's also fun, because it's like I get to figure that out, and I get to decide what that looks like. And if something isn't a right fit for maybe currently, right now, this season, I get to change it. And that's in my prerogative to do so.
Yeah, it's been fun watching you make those changes too. It's been inspirational as I've seen you on that journey, making pivots and changes. I'm like, well, I can make a pivot and change too. So
Yeah. I used to like bury my head in the sand a little bit and be like, yet another pivot. Here we go. But I look at it now and I'm like, every bit of it was part of the lessons I needed to learn. And they're all going to be part of my story at some point in some book somewhere.
and I will say, because with your podcast being for founders, one of the biggest challenges, I guess, is all this tech stuff behind the scenes. Like, what I love doing the most is when I'm on the coaching call and seeing those aha moments. I mean, I get tingles in my arms, like when we land on something that's just like really impactful. I'm like, oh, that's it. That's the good stuff. And I walk out of those calls so energized and so excited, and wish I could capture more of that in the day to day. Like, okay, the tech isn't working, or, okay, I've got to create this lead magnet or the funnel, the whatever, all of that stuff has been a huge learning curve for sure. And at this point, I'm still doing all of that on my own. So if you want to know about ConvertKit or Calendly, or what we were talking about earlier, my recording studio for the podcast. I've been in 3 or 4 different iterations of that. So it's all been a lot of learning curve along the way, and it's exciting to keep growing.
No, and I think that's a great point though too of like we don't have to do this alone, right? I mean, I think every last one of us who are choosing to be an entrepreneur, we know that we're stepping into doing stuff that we've never done before. You know, there's a certain piece of launching our business that we're stepping 100% into our expertise. Like I love that where you have landed is helping women and bringing your HR, background together, and you have this very perfect marriage of your background. But at the same time, your background was not setting up a podcast recording studio and setting up nurture sequences and lead magnets and all of these things, right? And so I think that that is the really beautiful part because it's so easy for us to say it's our business, we have to figure it out. But you and I solved a problem for your podcast booking by simply chatting back and forth on a LinkedIn
Yeah.
message. And it didn't take a coffee chat and paying for a consultation. And, like sometimes it's just being honest with like the people who want to support you and see you win and who are in your network and saying, I can't figure this out, or I'm stuck and I can't get out of my own way.
Right.
Just point me in the right direction. And it's been so nice to just remind myself because I don't know about you, but I can very much get caught in my own head where it's like, it's my business. I have to figure it out. And sometimes I have to let go a little bit of that control and just be like, I don't have all the answers, but someone else in my network probably does. And I can save myself a lot of heartache and headache if I just go ask for help
Yeah,
sometimes.
absolutely. Absolutely. And that's been the beautiful part for me this past year is growing my network so much with people like yourself that are in it. And even though we live across the country from each other, I know you've just moved, but it's this network of support that is really, really helpful. And especially as a solopreneur, I remember thinking when I left corporate, I'm like, I am working so many hours and so hard for someone else. Imagine what I could do if I put that energy towards my own business. And then it's like wide open. It's like I could do anything, which made it hard to like pick what to work on. And that's where it just is like you said just a minute ago, I don't know anything about sales, or I didn't, or marketing or funnels or all of that. And tapping into my network and other people, like when I see, oh, like even for you, the way you've got your podcast stuff set up, I'm like, oh, I want to like learn from you about that because it looks really nice. And I'm talking as on the guest side. Of course, there's the we don't what the public sees, but on the back end, you've done a beautiful job, and so we can learn from each other and share. So that's the beautiful part of our network, and I really appreciate you being a part of mine.
Oh, so much. Well, Christina, I'm so glad we got to do this. When I think of entrepreneurs just getting started and a beautiful founder story, yours comes to mind all the time. And so I'm really grateful that we got to share it with the audience. As you're headed into what's next for 2025, how can we help support you and what's next for you?
Thanks for asking that question. Really, what I am wanting to do next is get more of my systems in place because I've kind of cobbled things together just, based on what I needed in the moment. And now they work, but I know it could be better. And so I feel like my systems are a little clunky. And so that's the type of thing that I'm looking for help on is getting more systems in place to make things more streamlined and easier. And like I don't have a website yet. And so I'm looking at different options like do I create the website and have all the tools that come with that and migrate everything over, or is what I'm doing like good enough, because I don't want to get too caught up in all of there's so much that we can do, right? Versus what's most important. So those are the things that I'm going to be looking for help with from my network is, and I'm, starting to reach out to people like, hey, have you used Honeybrook? Because I know, anyway, I've been reaching out, asking those types of questions, like, what are you guys using just so I can get ideas and hopefully streamline my processes a little bit better.
Awesome. Well, I'll make sure all of the links to connect with you are in the show notes, Christina, especially if you are a woman in Christina's audience or potential audience. Your stories and the stories that you share are just so honest, and like I said, so heartwarming. And I just love every time I see your smile show up on my LinkedIn feed. So I want to make sure that all the other women out there can connect with you. So we'll make sure that we have your links in the show notes so they can do
Well,
that.
thank you. I appreciate it so much, Gabs. Thanks for having me here today, too.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Overwhelmed and Over It. Christina is one of our many experts who hang out in our community, The Village, and together we're solving those problems of how do you build a lead magnet? How do you set up your podcast guesting flow? How do you freaking find your next client? And let's talk about all of the things that are weighing heavy as we're trying to navigate parenting, entrepreneurship, and frankly, just figuring out our lives together. We'd love to have you join us in The Village. You can join us and be part of our monthly service swaps, be part of our coaching experiences during the day, and all for less than what it's going to cost you to run through the drive-thru tonight, because let's be real, you're too exhausted to cook dinner. I hope to see you over there. You can join us at gabshayes.com/village, and the links are also in the show notes, plus all of the links to connect with Christina, because I'm telling you right now, she's going to be one of your favorite people that just feels like a big virtual hug, and I hope that you get to connect with her because she's just a powerhouse to have on my feed and to get to spend some time with every day.